Hello, everyone. Welcome to our continuing series, That Was Then, This Is Now, Women's Firsts. I'm Babette Henderson. I'm the Senior Director of Alumni Engagement for the Feinberg School of Medicine. This webinar is co-hosted by our Women in Medicine Subcommittee and our Half Century Club. I would like to introduce you to our presenter. Joseph Guggenheim, MD, is a retired orthopedic surgeon. He specialized in extremity reconstruction in adults and children and also general pediatric orthopedics. Credited with 28 original scientific publications and book chapters and 66 scientific presentations, Dr. Guggenheim graduated from Rice University in Houston and Northwestern University Medical School. He completed his internship in the Northwestern program and his residency at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston. Dr. Guggenheim completed his fellowship at Boston Children's Hospital. He has served as president, program chair, and publications editor of the Limb Lengthening and Reconstruction Society. For relaxation, he has participated in running and equestrian competitions, and in his retirement, his new hobby is Chicago and Northwestern history. Dr. Guggenheim?
Thank you, Babette. I had this presentation written earlier this year, and Babette and the Alumni Association suggested I postpone it until we could do it in conjunction with the Alumni Association Women in Medicine Subcommittee. It's also fortuitous that the American Medical Association has designated September as Women in Medicine Month. So here it is in September. This talk is about 9 women who were pioneering physicians, breaking racial and gender barriers, and each was a first in her field. The 9 women are Mary Harris Thompson, the first woman graduate of Chicago Medical College in 1870, and the founder of Chicago's first nursing school and the first woman to perform major surgery in the US. Second is Sarah Hackett Stevenson, the first female member of the AMA, and first woman on the staff at Cook County Hospital, and the first woman to be appointed to the Illinois State Board of Health. Mary Elizabeth Bates was the first woman intern at Cook County Hospital. Bertha Van Hoosen was the first woman to head a medical department at a co-ed medical school. Ann Reynolds was the first African-American woman to graduate from one of the Northwestern University medical schools. Anna Ross Lapham was the first woman faculty member at Northwestern University Medical School, Dean of Women's Students, and Professor Emeritus. Augusta Webster was the first woman to be named full professor at Northwestern University Medical School, and the first woman to head a department, the OB-GYN department at a major teaching hospital, Cook County. Alice Hamilton was the first woman faculty member at Harvard, and Debbie Thomas was the first African-American athlete to win a medal in the Winter Olympics, the first African-American woman to hold the US national title in ladies single figure skating, and the first Northwestern University Medical School graduate to win a medal in the Winter Olympics. Let's look at the parallel development of medical education, men's and women's education. It all began in 1859 when 4 disgruntled members of the Rush Medical College faculty met to establish a new medical department. They affiliated with Lent University, which was in Lake Forest. Lent University had some financial problems during the Civil War, and in 1863, the medical department became Chicago Medical College. The Lent University was terminated in 1868. In 1870, because the university was bankrupt, Chicago Medical College affiliated with Northwestern. So there were only 2 years, 1868 to 1870, where Northwestern or its forerunners have not had a university affiliation. On the women's side, in 1869, Chicago Medical College matriculated 4 women. Dr. Leslie Airy's 600-page book on the history of the medical school says 3, but Katie Littall, the special collections librarian at the Galter Library, has the names of 4 and the minutes from the faculty meeting that said there were 4. So let's go with 4. In 1870, Mary Harris Thompson, who was the first graduate of the Chicago Medical College, and William Byford, who was one of the founders of Chicago Medical College, founded Women's Hospital Medical College of Chicago. In 1879, the college became independent of the hospital, and the name was changed to Women's Medical College of Chicago. In 1892, the Women's College officially affiliated with Northwestern, and the name was changed to Northwestern University Women's Medical School. The college was abruptly closed in 1902 because of many reasons, including financial. In 1906, the Men's Chicago Medical College surrendered its charter to become Northwestern University Medical School. Northwestern and its predecessors were not coeducational from 1870 until 1926. In 1926, 4 women were admitted because that was the number in a dissecting team. It was thought that it was improper for men and women to dissect together. In 1963, the tradition was broken and 9 women were admitted. Since we postponed this until this September, now I have the latest data on the entering class. It is now 56% women. Last year, the 2020 entering class was 53% women, so the numbers are going up. And the first year, the PGY1 residents are now 54% women. So let's look at these amazing women one by one. Mary Harris Thompson was the first woman to graduate from Chicago Medical College. Actually, she was the only one. She and 3 others were admitted, but she was the only one that was allowed to have a degree. She was the founder of Chicago's first nursing school and the first woman to perform major surgery in the United States, perhaps the first woman surgeon in the United States. Dr. Thompson was born in Fort Anne, New York in 1829. She taught elementary school for a while, and then at age 30, she decided to become a physician. She graduated from the prestigious New England Female Medical College in Boston in 1863. She studied some in New York with the Elizabeth Blackwell and Emily Blackwell, the 2 first women to obtain a medical degree in the United States. She moved to Chicago to care for the women and children who had lost husbands and fathers in the Civil War. Dr. Thompson established the Chicago Hospital for Women and Children in 1865, primarily for those affected by the Civil War. The first building had only 14 beds. It was at the intersection of Dearborn and Indiana, and this was the first hospital to be staffed by women physicians. At the time, there were only 2 hospitals in Chicago. One would not allow women on neither would allow women on the staff, and one would not even admit women. This hospital was renamed the Mary Thompson Hospital after her death in 1895. Male doctors were integrated into the staff in 1972. The final building had 203 beds, and it was on North Ashland Avenue, and it was closed in 1988. Dr. Harris graduated from the New England Medical School, but she wanted additional training, so she applied to Rush. She was rejected because of her gender. She then enrolled in the Chicago Medical College as one of the 4 female matriculants in 1869. These 4 women were only allowed to stay 1 year. She was granted a degree, ad unum, meaning she already had a degree, but was given another one, basically an endorsement by the second school. So she had a degree from Chicago Medical College in 1870. So she was the first and only woman ever to receive a degree from Chicago Medical College. The other 3 had to find other places to continue their education. With the help of William Byford, a OB-GYN doctor, Dr. Thompson and Dr. Byford opened Women's Hospital Medical College in 1870. And their first student was Julia Cole, one of the 3 women expelled from CMC. It opened in 1870 and then destroyed by the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, the following year. After the fire, the hospital and school were reestablished in several locations. Patients were taken care of in private homes. And in 1873, the school was established in a retrofitted house called the Little Barn, as you can see in this picture. In 1874, permanent buildings were built at the intersection of Adams and Paulina for the hospital and nursing school. The medical school separated from the hospital in 1879. Dr. Thompson became clinical professor of gynecology. The college was taken over by Northwestern University in 1892, but it did not have the same arrangement with the men's medical school. It became Northwestern University Women's Medical School, but was abruptly closed in 1902 for several reasons. The faculty seemed to have lost interest. There were coeducational medical schools going up throughout the United States, and the application numbers were falling. The college was relying on only donations and student fees for their financial support. And Northwestern was not contributing anything, unlike to the men's school or to the pharmacy school. So the college had to close in 1902. Dr. Thompson was originally one of those who campaigned for donations from the wealthy women of Chicago, but this was not adequate to support the school and had to close. Dr. Thompson established the first nursing school in the Midwest with specialized training in anesthesiology, which was sought after, and her graduates were sought after in many hospitals. She was the first woman to perform major surgery in the United States, and perhaps the first woman surgeon in the United States. She specialized in abdominal and pelvic surgery and was one of the most famous surgeons of her time, male or female, in the US. She was the first woman to present a paper at the AMA section on diseases of children. She invented several surgical instruments. She opened up the healthcare profession to women. There's a marble bust of her in the Art Institute given by her colleagues. Our second incredible doctor is Sarah Hackett Stevenson. She was the first female member of the American Medical Association and the first woman on the staff at Cook County Hospital. She was also the first woman appointed to the Illinois State Board of Health. She graduated from the Women's Hospital Medical College in 1874 and went to Europe for additional training with Charles Darwin and Thomas Huxley. She returned to Chicago and became a professor of histology and physiology at the Women's Medical College and became professor of obstetrics. She was the first female member of the American Medical Association, joining in 1876. You can see in this roster on the right, many physicians abbreviated their name, first and middle names. Dr. Stevenson did not want to hide her gender, so she had her full name published in this roster. In 1880, she co-founded the Illinois Training School for Nurses in response to the charges that women of loose morals and tramps that steal the patient's food were very often the nurses. And in many hospitals, long-term patients, especially men, did the nursing care. She was appointed to the Illinois State Board of Health. She helped organize the Women's Model Lodging House, a shelter for women, the Home for the Incurables, which was a place that took care of long-term patients that had such conditions as tuberculosis, rheumatism, and tabes dorsalis, and established the Illinois Training School for Nurses. She worked with Frances Willard of the Women's Christian Temperance Union to try to avoid medicines containing alcohol. She advocated the coeducational teaching of medicine, saying that since men and women treat patients together side by side, why shouldn't they be educated side by side? She authored several books, and these are two of them on the right. Her books are still available on Amazon. Our third woman physician who broke racial and gender barriers is Mary Elizabeth Bates. She was the first woman intern at Cook County Hospital. She was an intern 15 years after the first male intern. She was also a graduate of the Women's Medical College. She described her experience at Cook County as the first 6 months were hell, the second 6 months were purgatory, the third 6 months were heaven. When it came time when it came time for me to leave, I wept bitter tears. I think a lot of us who did internships feel this way. She taught surgery and anatomy at Women's Medical College. For health reasons, she moved to Denver and became politically active and working on social campaigns. She campaigned for women's suffrage, physical examination of school children, and treatment of certain uncovered medical conditions. She also opposed prostitution and cruelty. The move to Denver must have been good for her health because she lived until she was 93 years old. Number 4 is Bertha Van Hoosen, the first woman to head a medical department at a co-ed medical school. She became head of obstetrics at Loyola Medical School. She was the first woman appointed under civil service to Cook County Hospital and became head of the gynecology staff at that hospital. She attended public schools near Pontiac, Michigan. She grew up in a rural area near Stony Creek, Michigan. Her father took her to school in a horse-drawn wagon on Mondays and picked her up on Fridays. You can see in this picture on the right, she is with some of her fellow graduates at the University of Michigan. She is the one on the far right on the top row. Dr. Van Hoosen graduated from the University of Michigan in 1884. However, her parents did not want to pay for any more education. So in order to pay for medical school, she taught calisthenics, worked as an OB nurse and an anatomy demonstrator. She graduated from University of Michigan Medical School in 1888. She completed 3 residencies, including New England Hospital for Women and Children, and also a hospital in Detroit and in Kalamazoo, Michigan. A lot of her education was self-taught because of opposition by male students who often called her hen medic. She opened a private practice in Chicago in 1892 and became a professor of anatomy and embryology at Northwestern University Women's Medical School. She headed the gynecology department at the Women's Medical School for 9 months until it closed in 1902, and became professor of clinical gynecology and the first female faculty member at the University of Illinois College of Medicine, despite opposition by the male faculty. She then became chairperson of obstetrics at Loyola University Medical School, becoming the first woman to head a medical department at a co-ed med school. She was also the first woman to present at major medical conferences. She pioneered twilight sleep during childbirth using scopolamine and morphine and perfected the buttonhole appendectomy. She emphasized hygiene and sterilization during surgery and was one of the best known and longest practicing physicians and surgeons in the world. She did not retire until she was 88 years old and died of a stroke the next year. She was barred from membership in the Chicago Gynecological and Obstetrical Society, and she opposed the medical establishment's discrimination against women. So she founded and became the first president of the American Women's Medical Association in 1915. That organization continues to exist. Her autobiography was titled Petticoat Surgeon, published in 1947, and it too is still available on Amazon. Emma Ann Reynolds is number 5 on our list. She was the first African-American graduate of Northwestern University Women's Medical School. She was born before the 13th Amendment had been ratified, graduated from Wilberforce University in Ohio. She became a school teacher in Kansas City, where she noticed great disparities in the medical care that Black patients and white patients received. She wanted to meet the needs of the Black community, so she applied to nursing school. And you can guess what happened. She was rejected because of her gender. With the help of Daniel Hale Williams, who was one of the first, if not the first, graduate of Chicago Medical College, Black graduate, they opened Provident Hospital in 1891. The hospital was the first hospital in Chicago to be owned and operated by African Americans. It was located at 29th Street and Dearborn, very close to the Chicago Medical College. Dr. Reynolds graduated from Providence Nursing School in 1892, and then immediately enrolled in Northwestern University Women's Medical School in 1895. She and her brother moved to Waco, Texas, New Orleans, Louisiana, and Washington, D.C., where she practiced medicine and was recognized as an expert in contagious diseases. She moved back to Ohio later in retirement to take care of her parents. Anna Ross Lapham is number 6 on our list, another amazing achiever. She was the first woman to teach at Northwestern University Medical School. She became Dean of Students. She was a cum laude graduate of the Northwestern University Women's Medical School and joined the Northwestern University Medical School faculty in 1919. She became Professor Emeritus of Obstetrics and Gynecology in 1946. Her colleagues regarded her as a splendid teacher, sympathetic, loved by students, associates, and patients. During her career, it is estimated she delivered more than 10,000 babies. She donated $100,000 to the medical school in 1950, which would be worth more than $1.1 million today. Alice Hamilton is number 7 on our list, the first woman faculty member at Harvard University. And this is not just Harvard Medical School. This is the entire Harvard University going back to 1636 when it was founded. She was the first woman recipient of the Albert Lasker Public Service Award. And she and her siblings, there were 5 of them, were all super achievers. She was homeschooled at first and then completed her education at finishing school. She was multilingual. She graduated from the University of Michigan Medical School in 1893 and then interned at Minneapolis Hospital for Women and Children and New England Hospital for Women and Children. She went to study in Europe, but was met with resistance and prejudice, especially in Germany. So she returned to the United States and completed her studies at Johns Hopkins University under such luminaries as William Osler and Simon Flexner, and then moved to Chicago in 1897, where she became professor of pathology at Northwestern University Women's Medical School. She wanted to provide a useful service to the world. She was born in a very comfortable, perhaps affluent family, but she wanted to help the poor. She moved into Hull House, the service center for originally for immigrants, but then also serviced helped the poor and working class in the west side of Chicago. She taught English, art, and athletics, and operated an after-hours well baby clinic. She noticed that many of the residents in the neighborhood had long-term health problems, and she wanted to identify the causes of typhoid and tuberculosis in the local residents. She became concerned with health hazards seen in the working class in the neighborhood, those that had become impaired due to industrialization. She was a pioneer in the field of industrial toxicology. She identified the toxic effect of many chemicals, including trinitrotoluene, TNT. This was used as an explosive in World War I. So it was controversial whether she should have been criticizing it. So she met with some criticism for that. She did research on hand conditions in jackhammer operators, pulmonary tuberculosis in tombstone carvers, and spastic anemia in limestone cutters. She was honored by this 1995 US postage stamp. She became the first female faculty member at Harvard in 1919, and this was the first female faculty member of any of the schools there. She was an assistant professor of industrial medicine. The school looked for experts in the field and discovered that all of them were women. So they had to take a woman faculty member. In the 16 years she was there, she never received a promotion. Her contracts were renewed in 3-year blocks only. She was not allowed to march in commencement. She was not given tickets to the Harvard football games. She could not enter the Harvard Union or the faculty club, and yet she was a successful fundraiser for the university. She opposed the British blockade of Germany, aimed to force Germany to accept the terms of the Treaty of Versailles after World War I. This resulted in starving children. And a prominent Harvard professor demanded she stop speaking out against this. She replied that the only way that the sight of a starving child could be made endurable was by speaking out. Many of her male colleagues thought that her work was tainted with socialism or with feminine sentimentality for the poor. Her work led to workers' compensation laws and occupational disease laws, and she was awarded the Albert Lasker Public Service Award in 1947 for her research and work in public health. Augusta Webster is our eighth on our list. She was the first woman to be named a full professor at the Northwestern University Medical School. She was the first woman in the United States to head a department at a major teaching hospital, being chief of OB gynecology at Cook County. She earned her MD degree from Northwestern University Medical School and did an OB-GYN residency at Passavant and Cook County hospitals and practiced in Chicago for over 50 years. She became professor emeritus. She was the first woman to be named a full professor at Northwestern University Medical School and the first woman in the United States to be a department chair at a major teaching hospital. And the Northwestern Medical School Office of Medical Education was named in recognition of her. Last on our list is Debbie Thomas, 1997 graduate. She was the first African-American to win a medal in the Winter Olympics, the first African-American to win a U.S. national title in ladies figure skating, and the first Northwestern University medical graduate to win a Winter Olympic medal. At age 5, she told her mother she wanted to become a doctor and a champion skater and won her first skating competition at age 9. Her coach recommended that she start de-emphasizing athletics, to de-emphasize academics to concentrate more on her skating, but she refused to do this and graduated from Stanford University with an engineering degree. She went to Northwestern, where she volunteered with a skating program for inner city children. She earned her MD degree in 1997 and then did an orthopedic residency in Los Angeles. She won an incredible number of skating awards. She won the World Figure Skating Championship in 1986, the U.S. National Figure Skating Champion in 1986 and 88, the World Professional Figure Skating Championship in 88, 89, and 91. She was named the ABC Wide World of Sports Athlete of the Year in 1986. She won a bronze medal in the Winter Olympics in 1988 and was the first African-American to win a medal in the Winter Olympics in a sport where white competitors were often given higher scores for inferior programs. She was inducted into the U.S. Figure Skating Hall of Fame in 1990. She was on the U.S. Figure Skating Sports Medicine Committee. She worked with Athletes Against Drugs. She was on the U.S. Olympic Sports Medicine Committee and marched in the U.S. delegation with the opening ceremonies at the 2006 Winter Olympics. She is one of only 3 alumni of the medical school to appear on Time magazine cover, the other 2 being Charles Mayo, the founder of the Mayo Clinic, and Joseph DeLee, the founder of the Chicago Maternity Center. The medical school has only 2 Olympic medalists, Dr. Thomas and also William Drugemuller, the 1932 graduate who won a silver medal in the 1928 pole vault at the Olympics. Well, I'm out of adjectives to describe these incredible, amazing women and their achievements. What they accomplished would be admirable today in the 21st century, but their achievements are even more admirable and incredible in the 19th and 20th century. There are many women faculty members and or alumni that I did not have time to discuss. For further information, I recommend you log on to the medical school website and also the Galter Library site. There's an incredible story about the Women's Medical School history on the Northwestern Alumni Association, not the medical school, but the Northwestern Alumni Association digital lecture gallery by Katie Littall, which she recorded earlier this year. I'd like to thank Katie for the help she gave me with the information and the pictures for this presentation. And I think we have some questions.
We do, Dr. Guggenheim. Thank you so much for that informative presentation. It was fabulous. We do have a few pre-submitted questions that we wanted to ask you. Do you have any information regarding women dentists?
That was a tough one, but I did look it up. There are two that I found. Vida Latham, who had both a DDS and MD degree, her MD from Northwestern in 1895. She became an assistant professor of pathology and director of the microscope lab from 95 to 97. She was a pioneer of women research in dentistry and medicine. But she had an MD and a DDS degree. The other one that I found was Julian Blewett Foster. She was born in Washington, D.C., went to Howard University, a predominantly historically black school, and wanted to become a veterinarian, but there were no vet schools in Washington, D.C., so she went to Howard University Dental School, where she graduated in 1962. She wanted to do something where she could be independent and make a contribution, so she became a dentist. She was driven by the desire to bring dental care to everyone, especially children. She said, for children, dental care is a right. She joined the dental school faculty in 1967, and then became an assistant dean in 1970 and associate dean in 1972. She was dean of student affairs from 1988, I believe, until the school closed in 2001. She was the first woman president of the Chicago Dental Society in its 128-year history. And in 1994, became the first woman to lead the prestigious American College of Dentists, which is an honorary organization. In 1970, only 2% of the Northwestern University Dental School class, immigrant class, were women. By 1990, the number was 38%. And it was anticipated that by 2000, it would be at least 40%. And then the school closed in 2001. So there are incredible women in the dental school also.
Fabulous. Thank you. That's a great answer. Can you share any comparisons between the struggles of women who are pioneer lawyers versus pioneer doctors? The person who asked this question said, I think an NU grad was the first female in the country to get a law degree, but she couldn't practice law because it was against the law, and that she founded a legal newspaper instead.
You got me on that one, Babette. If you send me the question and who submitted it, I'll look that one up.
Absolutely. Okay, great. We will submit that to you. The other one was, another question was, I'm reading The Cape Doctor based on a female and doctor who lived her life as a man. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I looked that book up on Amazon. It's The Cape Doctor by E.J. Levy, published earlier this year. And it's a historical novel. And it caught my attention. I'm going to put it on my wish list because it looked very interesting. Another book our audience might be interested in is The Doctor's Blackwell by Janice Nimura. It was published earlier this year. It's a book about Elizabeth and Emily Blackwell, the two first female physicians in the United States. It's very interesting.
Great. Great. And then another question that was submitted is, why was there so little support for continuing the NU Women's Medical School versus, say, a women's medical school in Philadelphia? Why was it not the Affluent Society women behind it? Why were they not behind this school?
Well, as I said briefly, it relied on donations, and the founder, Mary Elizabeth Thompson, or Mary Harris Thompson, had to get donations from the wealthy women of Chicago. And the only sources of fees for this medical school was either donations or student fees. And both the male and female medical schools realized that at the turn of the century, they had to get fees from somewhere else. They had to get an endowment. And the medical school and dental school affiliated with Northwest, medical school and pharmacy school, male medical school, affiliated with Northwestern, and they received financial support from the university. But for some reason, the women's medical school did not receive support. They wanted to upgrade their facilities at the end of the 19th century, and the university would not give them any support, so they took out a loan to do this. They also wanted to know if perhaps they could use the facilities at the male medical school instead of either moving or upgrading their own facilities, and the medical school said no. So they took out this loan to upgrade their facilities, which they did, and had financial problems repaying the loan, and the university would not help them at all. So it closed for financial reasons in 1902. And also, as I said, waning interest by the faculty and declining number of applicants because of the establishment of co-ed med schools elsewhere in the country.
Great, thank you. And then lastly, can you elaborate a bit more on Dr. Beatrice Tucker of the Chicago Maternity Center?
Dr. Tucker was the director of the Chicago Maternity Center. And I would refer you to the alumni, our medical association, Medical Alumni Association January newsletter, because there's a presentation on the early days of obstetrics at Northwestern and highlighting the maternity center and Dr. Tucker. Also, the spring issue of Northwestern Medicine, the back cover, has an article about Dr. Tucker. That's one reason I didn't mention her. She was a first. She was the first woman resident in the University of Chicago lying-in hospital OB-GYN program. She graduated from University of Chicago and then graduated from Rush Medical College. She practiced medicine, but then at age 35 decided she wanted to go into OB. She entered Dr. DeLee, Joseph DeLee's residency program when he was out of town, and he was a misogynist. He came back and found she was in the program and was very angry, but decided to let her finish. Despite the insults that she received from him, she finished his program, and then he asked her to stay on as the director of the Chicago Maternity Center, telling her that the only way she'll ever know how good she is if she works in conditions that were the kind they had at the maternity center in the near west side of Chicago. She practiced there from 1932 until it closed in 1973 when it was demolished to build the University of Illinois Chicago Circle campus. In her career, she supervised over 100,000 births. She helped educate nurses and physicians, as well as medical students from our medical school, Chicago Medical School, and the University of Wisconsin. Her father practiced medicine without a license, so she grew up constantly moving, trying to stay one step ahead of the boards in the various states. So she felt some guilt and wanted to do some penance. And so when she came to the maternity center, she lived in the basement during the 1930s, during the Great Depression, and then moved up to the third floor for most of the rest of her life. She never married, but she did adopt some children.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Guggenheim, for such a fascinating presentation and for partnering with our Women in Medicine subcommittee to present on these amazing women. For more information on the history of Chicago, please check out Dr. Guggenheim's monthly series in our alumni newsletter. We always look forward to his topics, and we hope everyone enjoyed hearing more about women's firsts. We thank you all for joining us and have a wonderful day.